Okay, this is one of those Ottawa days where you can hear the faint sound of every political staffer choking on their coffee at the exact same time.
Yep, because another Conservative MP just crossed the floor to the Liberals. Alberta's Matt Jeneroux from Edmonton Riverbend is now in Mark Carney's government caucus.
And before anyone starts yelling, he's just chasing power, let's lay out what actually happened, why it matters, and why this is not just inside baseball for political nerds.
It matters because Canada is sitting in a tense moment. Trade pressure, security pressure, and a parliament that's close enough to majority that a handful of seats can change the entire country's direction.
So here's the math. With Jeneroux switching over, the Liberals are at 169 seats in a 343-seat House of Commons. That's 3 seats short of a majority. A majority is 172.
And if you're thinking, wait, wasn't he leaving politics? You're not imagining it. Jeneroux said earlier that he was stepping away, but then he reversed course and said he decided to stay because, in his words, this moment demands steady leadership and real cooperation.
He didn't just wake up one morning and feel that way. He said it was Mark Carney's Davos speech that convinced him not to walk away from politics altogether.
Remember, Poilievre had already talked him into staying until spring. He could have kept his head down, finished his term, and vanished. Instead, after Davos, he didn't just stay, he switched teams. That tells you a lot about who's attracting serious people right now and who's pushing them away.
Steady leadership. That's not a slogan you pick if you're trying to set the internet on fire. It's the phrase you use when you're basically saying, I don't like where my party's going, and I don't want to be attached to it.
And Carney didn't just welcome him like, hey, grab a seat. Carney immediately framed this as ambition, collaboration, and occasionally sacrifice, and then appointed Jeneroux as the special advisor on economic and security partnerships.
Which is a very Carney title. It sounds like a job where you spend half your time talking to allies and the other half explaining to Canadians why the world is getting rougher and why we need to get smarter. Matt Jeneroux is the 3rd Conservative MP to walk away from Pierre Poilievre's caucus and sit with Carney. 3. That's not a one person had a weird day kind of thing. That is a pattern.
The first was Chris D'Entremont from Nova Scotia. That one landed like a thunderclap because it wasn't some backbencher nobody. This was a recognizable Conservative voice in Atlantic Canada, and he said he couldn't square himself with where Poilievre was taking the party.
Then came Michael Maw in December, an Ontario MP, brand new in the job, and he basically said, I'm picking unity and decisive action.
And now, Jeneroux from Alberta, saying he reflected on the gravity of the moment and decided Canada needed steady leadership and actual collaboration. If one MP crosses, Dave, it's a headline. But when 3 cross in a short window, it's a sign that your caucus is cracking.
And the key detail here is this. It's not 3 random MPs all having the same midlife crisis. It's 3 MPs in 3 different regions all making the same basic argument. I don't like where this party is headed, and I don't want to be a part of it.
And it lands right on Pierre Poilievre's desk like a brick. Reuters and the AP both described this as another blow to Poilievre's grip on his caucus, especially after a messy stretch where he lost that last election, and he lost his riding, then he had to ride again, and now he's looking for another riding.
Now, the question everyone at home asks is the same one that they always ask. Why would anyone do this?
Well, let's do the honest version of explaining. Sometimes floor crossings happen because someone wants a job. Sometimes it happens because someone thinks their party is drifting into a dead end. And sometimes it happens because they think the country is heading into a storm and they want to be on the bridge instead of yelling from the deck.
And sometimes it's all of the above, with a side order of, I'm not prepared to go down with this ship. Jeneroux's own framing is important. He said that he reconsidered after thinking about the gravity of the moment and the need for constructive collaboration.
Gravity of the moment is political code for I don't trust the current approach and I don't want Canada making dumb choices out of pride.
But let's not pretend that this is just a personal story. The timing is strategic because the Liberals are not far from a majority and there are 3 vacancies in the House right now.
And this is where it gets spicy because two of those vacancies are in Chrystia Freeland's old seat and Bill Blair's old seat. Both are widely seen as safe Liberal holds in a by-election. That's the kind of situation where the governing party circles the date on the calendar with a big red marker and starts measuring the curtain fabric for the majority window.
And the third vacancy is in Terrebonne, Quebec, where the Supreme Court annulled the 2025 election result after the Liberals won by just one vote. That seat is now heading back to voters.
One vote. Now, I want every person who ever said, "My vote doesn't matter," to sit down and stare in the corner for a full minute, because one vote can literally trigger a national political chain reaction.
So here's what this floor crossing does in the real world. It puts Carney closer to a majority without needing to win a brand new general election.
And it's also a sign that Carney's pitch, which is stronger alliances, more resilient trade, more independence, that's attracting people who were elected under the Conservative banner but don't want to spend the next few years doing performative outrage while Canadians navigate major global pressure.
Reuters flat out ties his majority chase to Carney's argument that he needs more parliamentary stability to respond to major challenges, including U.S. tariff pressure.
And that's the key. A minority government can still govern, but every big decision becomes a negotiation. Every bill becomes a hostage situation, and every confidence vote becomes a cliff edge.
A majority changes that. A majority means Carney can pass budgets, pass big policy packages, and not spend every week begging for support from parties that would rather watch him fail.
Now, let's deal with the criticism that always comes next. Well, here's what a lot of people don't realize. In Canada, Dave, floor crossing is allowed. There is no rule that says if you switch parties, you automatically lose your seat. You're elected as an MP and you sit where you sit.
Which is why the reaction from constituents is always intense. Because voters feel like they hired you under one brand and you showed up in a different uniform. So floor crossing is legal, it's allowed, and it has a long history in Canada, but it is complicated.
It depends on the reasons, the timing, and whether the MP can look their riding in the face and say, "Here is why I did it." And floor crossings, by the way, have happened with both parties.
That's right. Floor crossing is one of the few political actions where you can't hide behind talking points. You either justify to your constituents or you get judged for it.
That's why Poilievre immediately called this a betrayal. Framed the MP as a traitor so you don't have to talk about why he left in the first place.
He jumped on social media and said, and I quote, that Mac Jeneroux has betrayed the people of Edmonton Riverbend who voted for affordable food and homes, safe streets, and a strong resource sector.
And then he went further, accusing Mark Carney of trying to seize a costly Liberal majority that Canadians voted against through what he called dirty backroom deals.
And that's the whole frame in one post. He's the lone defender of affordable living, everyone who disagrees with him is corrupt, and any MP who leaves must be a traitor to their own riding.
But what he doesn't do in that statement is answer the one question that actually matters. Why are serious conservatives deciding they'd rather sit with Mark Carney than stay with Pierre Poilievre?
If multiple MPs are leaving the Conservatives for the Liberals, that suggests that there is a deep internal argument happening inside the Conservative caucus about what kind of party they actually want to be, and whether Poilievre can actually keep them together.
After the first floor crossers, Poilievre was asked if he'd reflect on his leadership style. He said flat out no, that the strategy was fine and the problem was everyone else. Well, at some point, when people keep heading for the exit, it's not just a them problem anymore. And if you're a conservative strategist watching this, well, you're not just annoyed. You might be terrified because it doesn't just shave a number off your seat count. It signals instability. It gives permission to other MPs to quietly think, well, if they did it, maybe I can too.
Listen, politics is contagious. Good ideas spread, bad habits spread faster. Floor crossing? Well, that spreads when people feel the party's brand is becoming a liability in their own ridings for their own constituents.
Now let's talk about what Carney is doing here, because it's not just welcome aboard. He's building a governing story. Canada needs to be more resilient, more independent, and more connected to allies economically and on security.
Yeah, and giving Jeneroux an economic and security partnerships role fits that story. Alberta MP, economic file, security file. It's basically a political bridge between Western credibility and national priorities.
And it puts an Edmonton voice closer to the center of the government decision-making at a time when Alberta politics is usually framed as Ottawa versus Alberta.
Which brings us to the emotional subtext. This is Alberta. Conservative heartland often. So when an Alberta Conservative MP crosses to the Liberals, it's not just a seat, it's a signal.
People inside that caucus are making calculations based on the country's direction.
And people's feelings. So let's talk about the man at the center of this, Pierre Poilievre.
Because if 3 of your MPs are leaving your caucus to sit with the government, that's not just Carney is charming, that's your leadership is driving people out.
Outside the party, his numbers are brutal. 42% favorable and 58% unfavorable with the broader public. And on top of that, national polling now has Carney out in front by roughly 29 points. That's not just a bad news cycle. That's a verdict on 2 very different styles of leadership.
That is the definition of polarizing. He can fire up a base, but he also creates a ceiling. And MPs in competitive ridings can see that ceiling coming.
And when politics becomes a permanent state of aggression, well, it doesn't just poison debate in the House. It spills out into the public, into social media. There's a cost when a leader normalizes contempt as the operating system, because that's exactly what he's doing. Now let's hit another story that's threading through all of this. Security clearance. Because there's an official House of Commons e-petition, E7148, calling on Parliament to require federal party leaders to obtain and maintain top-secret security clearance.
And if you're a moderate conservative MP watching your leader refuse clearance while the country is arguing about foreign interference, and then you're watching Carney build a security and economic partnership lane, well, you start to see why these floor crossings are happening in the first place.
Yeah, it's not only about power, it's also about credibility. And let's be honest about the optics. When you refuse clearance, you invite the simplest, ugliest argument. Are you hiding something? Are you protecting donors? Protecting back channels? Protecting who's funding the machine?
Maybe it's nothing. But if it's nothing, take the clearance and shut the questions down.
So when you connect the dots, 3 defections, a government 3-seat short of a majority, by-elections coming, and a national argument about security clearance, this isn't just a parliament drama. It's a fight over what kind of country we are under pressure. Serious, steady, and prepared, or loud, fractured, and performative.
And if Poilievre wants to stop the bleeding, he can't just scream betrayal. He has to answer the questions these MPs are forcing into the open.
Where is he taking the Conservative Party? And is that direction actually good for Canada?
And here's the irony that nobody wants to say out loud anyway, Dave. Carney is basically the most fiscally conservative-style liberal we've ever seen in a long time. The kind of steady institution-first approach you'd recognize from the old progressive conservative era.
So if you're a moderate conservative MP, the choice starts looking less like betrayal and more like, I can work with this. Because Carney isn't some raging lefty. He's a centrist, technocratic, Bay Street-trained operator offering stability and growing-up economics, while Poilievre is selling hard-edge rhetoric and permanent conflict.
And if you're watching from home, you don't have to love Mark Carney to see the difference. You just have to ask yourself who you actually trust when the world gets rough. The guy who won't take the security clearance, or the leader who moderates keep quietly drifting toward?
Floor crossing doesn't start in Ottawa. It starts in 100 quiet conversations in constituency offices where MPs hear the same thing over and over again. I didn't sign up for this. Well, if you've stuck with us this long, congratulations. You officially care more about Canadian democracy than half of Ottawa.
And if you want more of this kind of breakdown instead of whatever's trending on the outrage machine of TikTok, make sure you're subscribed. Hit the like button so the algorithm doesn't bury this under 10 clips of people yelling in pickup trucks.
And if you want to go deeper, make sure to join the A-Team. That's our members community.
Hop onto our Substack. That's where we park all of the information, the links, and the stuff we can't fit into 15 minutes on the video here.
And remember, share this with one friend who's on the fence and one relative who won't stop insisting that they're all the same. Because today proved that they're not.
Thanks for watching, everyone. We're Dave and Deb, and this is the Planet D Politics, and we will be back with more Canadian sanity in a very unserious world tomorrow.
Ciao for now.